Hi, welcome to Mindful Chatting, especially my private practice friends. I want to talk about one of the biggest mistakes that I see clinicians make when they start private practice. They're obsessed with getting clients. And you know what? I get it. Clients are exciting. Clients mean income, clients mean validation. Clients mean your practice is finally becoming real for you. But here's what nobody talks about. The easiest part of private practice is getting clients. The hardest part is building a practice that can actually support them. Because if you bring clients into a practice that doesn't have systems, policies, and protection in place, well, you're creating a huge risk for yourself, not just for your business, but for you. So today, I want to talk about the 4 things I believe every clinician should have before they ever see their first client. So let's unpack this together.
Welcome to Mindful Chatting, a podcast where therapy meets real life. I'm Kristen, a therapist, business owner, and a lifelong student of what it means to fully show up in our relationships, in our work, and in our healing. Here, we unpack mental health concepts, explore mindfulness tools, and talk through the messy, beautiful, in-between moments that shape us. Whether you're a fellow clinician, a curious listener, or someone navigating your own growth, this space is for you. Let's chat.
The first thing I want you to do is I want you to stop thinking like a therapist. I know that sounds crazy because that's what we went to school for, but I want you to start thinking like a practice owner right now. One of the biggest shifts that happens in private practice is realizing you are no longer just providing therapy. You are running a business, and business requires infrastructure. Most therapists spend years learning about diagnosing, treatment planning, interventions, and rapport building. But absolutely no one in graduate school teaches operations and systems and risk management and business structure. And that's where most of the biggest problems in our boards have. And this is where a lot of the problems begin. Private practice is not just clinical work. It's clinical work supported by business systems. And this is what we're going to unpack today. So the foundation first thing that I want you to do is your business structure. This is the least exciting thing to talk about, but it's what most people tend up skipping, but it matters. I want you to think about, do you need an LLC or a PLLC? Do you need a CPA, a business bank account, liability insurance, an EIN? Well, many clinicians run into seeing clients before ever answering these questions, which is super crazy. Don't. Because fixing these things later is often harder than building them correctly from the start. So when I opened Mindful Counseling and Supervision, I originally had a totally different name because I didn't know what I wanted to niche and what I wanted to do. And I learned that I needed to think about taxes and business accounts and income and managing support systems and where did I want my business to grow? And guess what? I didn't think about that until probably year 2 or 3. I was only thinking about how do I make money right now? And that was probably one of the biggest mistakes because as I went through and tried to expand my business, I had to step 2 forward and then I would take 3 steps back and it just didn't work. And what I wish I would have done was doing all of this in the very beginning. But this was incredibly valuable to me because now I can try talking about all of the things that I wish I should have done in the beginning. Because let's be honest, in the very beginning, I was just kind of Googling everything. Because in my graduate school, when I went to counseling, they talked about how private practice was one of these beautiful, heavenly things that only certain people can actually get, and that it was super hard to do. And it really derailed a lot of people in graduate school who graduated to not go into private practice and instead go into community health, which is super important. It actually helped me create a lot of my policies and procedures going that way. I do not regret it in the bit. But what I do regret is not knowing all of the options and knowledge that was available to me and thinking that that was not an option for me to do. But I'm not going to derail that or gatekeep that from you. Private practice is totally doable. You just have to make sure that you have the right infrastructure in place before you do that thing.
For any clinicians tuning in, if insurance billing is the part of your practice that drains your soul, Headway will be your best friend. They get you credentialed, send you referrals, manage your billing, submit your claims, all the stuff none of us went to grad school for. It's free to join, and honestly, it's been a huge support for therapists who want to take insurance without drowning in the administration part. My link is in the show notes if you want to check it out.
So now that we've talked about infrastructure, the next foundational piece that I think every clinician should think about is financial systems. This is where therapists tend to get a little bit uncomfortable because nobody really likes to talk about money. Most of us didn't become therapists because we love accounting, but money systems really do matter. You are going to need separate business finances from your personal one. You might need a bookkeeper later on. Or you might need a system or a service that provides you bookkeeping. You're going to need payment processing. How are you going to be collecting payments if you're going to collect them? You also think about how are you going to plan your taxes? How do you manage what is considered a tax write-off or a deduction compared to your personal finances and your taxes? And then you're going to have to track your income. Most financial stress destroys businesses faster than many people realize. And avoiding your numbers doesn't protect your anxiety, it actually feeds it. You should be opening up your financial systems weekly. You should know your numbers. You should know how many clients you should have each week. You should know how much is coming in every month. So you can see, oh my gosh, this is down more. Oh, great, I exceeded it this month. This should not be a surprise or a shock to you because you know your financial system. This should be part of your business. Now, this was something that I didn't actually start doing until probably year 2 or 3 in. I just kind of hoped I made enough income every month to support my ability to leave my full-time job so that I could go into private practice. What I wish I would have done was created that financial system in the first place so that I was opening it up weekly. Even if the weekly thing is really boring, great. Because if it's boring, then that means you're probably doing it right. And I wish I would have known to do this and create a CFO type role for myself, knowing that this was a new role that I'm playing now as a private practice owner. So knowing that, I would have made my theme days. So right now, every Friday is my CFO Friday. Every Friday, I am opening up my books and going, how did last week look? If I'm getting close to the end of the month, I'm looking at how did last month look so that I know what I need to do differently. Do I have vacations planned? Do I have time off scheduled? Is this going to change or hinder my income coming in? I already know all of this because I actively plan for this. This is an infrastructure within my practice. Foundation 3 that I want you to think about is your documentation systems. Most clinicians know that they need to do notes, but that's not enough. I want you to think about how are your notes completed? How are they stored? How are your treatment plans and when they are due? How are they tracked? How are records maintained for you? How are releases managed? The goal is consistency, not scrambling around. So when things are asked or a new client comes in and reaches out for services, you already have documentation, planning, and storage already in place. Now, what's beautiful about this is most EHR systems already have documentation storage aligned with this. But if you ever leave your EHR, you need to find some type of HIPAA compliant storage to manage all of your clients. Especially if you only plan on being private practice for a short period of time, you're still a custodial of all of those documentations. So you need to have some kind of plan on how to store them. Even if people leave your services and don't come back and they want records, you need to know how that process works for you. So that's something that I want you to think about before you ever open up your doors or open up your website, is to think about how is my documentation going to be stored? How am I going to manage this? Am I going to do my notes every time someone leaves? Is this something that I'm going to have to theme batch later in my week? Is this something I'm going to have to plan for? I want you to think about, and this will always kind of evolve. You know, in the beginning when I started, I did my notes after every person left, and then it just got to be too much, and I found that I wasn't regulating myself between sessions and I was burning out. Now I theme batch them. Now I plan scheduled time within my week to do the notes the day or maybe 1 or 2 days later. And I do that so that it helps with my brain shifting between different roles of my life. Because to be honest, when I go into a session, I want to be a therapist. I don't want to think about all of the notes that are lined up on my desk that I need to be doing.
Here's a quick note for my clinicians listening. If you're looking for a charting and practice management system that doesn't make you want to scream, well, guess what? I use TherapyNotes. It's clean, reliable, HIPAA compliant, and honestly saves me hours every week. You can try it with my link in the show notes.
Foundation 4 is your policies. This is probably the most overlooked area because policies create a lot of clarity, consistency, and protection for you. So I want you to think about certain policies like cancellation policies, your communication, your fees, your emergencies, your boundaries, and your paperwork. The best policies aren't created after the problem happens. They're created before problems. So I want you to think about cancellation fees. Right now, I have a 4-hour cancellation fee. A lot of clinicians have 24 hours, which is great, but that doesn't work with my population and my clientele. If they message me 4 hours before the appointment, I have my wait list that I can go to. That's a policy that I created. That's an infrastructure. I have a wait list that I can get to either through my phone or my computer, and I can message or reach out to the next person to fill that. And I've communicated this with clients. So if they are on the wait list, I'll tell them this is how I'm going to communicate with you. If an appointment opens up, you need to be available or to check this particular communication channel if that appointment's available to you. Cancellation fees may be like if you don't message me within those 4 hours of that appointment, you're going to have a fee. Or if I don't hear from you at all and you tell me that it was just not an emergency or you overslept, that's a cancellation fee. But guess what? I'm talking about that in the very first session that I'm meeting a client. It's also in my informed consent. There are 2 routes that I'm actually documenting that they knew about the cancellation fee. And guess what? As a clinician, there might be times where you waive it, but you need to have a policy about when it's waived. You also need to think about communication. One of the things that I think I should have done in the very beginning of my practice was created a communication policy with boundaries. At that time, it was during COVID, so a lot of my communication policy was over text messaging or via messaging service through whatever platform I was using, which was great. But I didn't give my clients specific boundary times of when they could message me. And so I think what I would have done, which I do now, is in the informed consent, along with me talking to them in the very first session, is what are the communication policies? Here's the different ways that you can reach me. Here's the times that I probably won't get back to you. And here's the crisis information if you go into a crisis and I'm not available to you. I also want you to think about the fees for service. Some people think about fees for just the services of your therapy appointments. Well, guess what? People are going to reach out for other things, like if they want a form filled out, or they need a letter for something, or they need documentation or records sent somewhere else. Guess what? You can charge fees for that, obviously within reason, but you need to have what they have is a good faith estimate. And on this good faith estimate, you need to lay out all your fees. So for personally, if someone's asking for records from me and it's the client and I'm giving it to the client, I don't charge them a fee. But if they want me to send it to a lawyer or to a third party and they have a release of information, you bet I'm charging that for a fee. If they want me to write a letter for something, or if they want me to fill out a form for work or things like that, I'm charging fees for that because that's time, that's effort that you're taking. You should be paid for that. I also want you to think about emergency appointments. I have one emergency appointment a week that I schedule within my schedule that's not outside of my business hours, and I don't fill it unless there's an emergency. But that's planned. That's a policy that I have. But guess what? I tell people I have an emergency appointments available when, if needed. I don't always offer it to everybody. And if it's taken, it's taken. That's what I have. People should not be leaning on or depending on that emergency appointment. And I create boundaries within myself of who's allotted that appointment when needed. I want you to think about your paperwork. Are you doing everything on paper or is it electronic? How are you keeping that HIPAA compliant? Again, a lot of EHR systems have the ability to have paperwork electronic, but I'm going to let you know right now, not every client is electronically sound. You need to also have physical paperwork for the people who don't fill out their paperwork and end up showing up in your waiting room. So there's things that you have to think about long term that might not always be the thing that pops out at you. But guess what? I'm telling you now because it's happened to me. And remember, the easiest time to create a boundary is before you need it. I think people are not wanting to do these foundational things in their private practice because technically they're not really exciting. People want to work on logos and websites and office decor and business cards and their social media, but those things don't protect you at the end of the day. The invisible infrastructure and the systems and policies, they are the ones that protect you. So let's zoom out. Systems aren't about becoming super rigid. They're about reducing uncertainty for you and for your client. They reduce decision fatigue, they reduce a lot of risk, they reduce some stress, and the stronger foundations you have, the less your practice depends on memory and mental bandwidth from you.
Okay, quick pause. Because you've ever found yourself rewinding this episode like 3 times because your brain just drifted, this is for you. I hear this all the time. I can focus, just not when I actually need to. And that's exactly what the focus course is about. Because here's the truth. ADHD isn't a lack of attention, it's a regulation issue, which is why some days you're locked in for hours and other days you're rereading the same sentence wondering what just happened. So inside my executive functioning focus course, I break this down in a way that actually makes sense for you. We go through how your attention works in your brain, your specific focus patterns, why you get distracted externally and internally, and how to actually build a system that helps you stay on track and come back when you drift. Because the goal isn't perfect focus, it's knowing how to return without spiraling. So if you're tired of blaming yourself and you just want something that actually works with your brain, I'll link the focus course in the show notes. All right, let's get back to this episode.
So your first client is actually not the goal. I don't think your first client should be your primary goal. Your primary goal should be building a practice that can ethically, legally, and sustainably support that client that you're trying to achieve. Because if you do that, the clients become so much easier to manage for you. Looking back, there were things that I worried about that didn't really matter nearly as much as I thought. And there were things that I overlooked that turned out to be incredibly important for a private practice. And guess what? Most of them were not clinical. They were operational, the things happening behind the scenes that no one sees. And that's what I want newer clinicians to understand and to not make the same mistakes. Most clinicians start seeing clients before they've built a foundation that keeps them safe. That's very scary. Don't let urgency rush you past the infrastructure of these foundations because a successful practice isn't built when clients arrive, it's built before they even arrive. Thank you for joining me, and as always, be gentle with your mind.
One more thing before you go, and this helps me personally, staying present and grounded, which we all need, especially when your brain wants to spiral into disconnection. Me too. It's Brain FM. It's musically designed to help ADHD brains, well, really anyone's brain, focus, relax, or sleep, and I use it almost daily. If you want to try it, I've dropped my link in the show notes. And if you're looking for planning tools or ADHD-friendly resources, I'll keep a list of my favorite links in every episode.